Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm sorry for the angle, but my tripod is like being really weird, so I have to film using my little tripod, and it's basically like looking up at my double chin, so I'm so sorry about that. A few people have been asking me on Instagram to film our autism story, so I was kind of holding back, just like I always hold back on all the like autism related videos, only because, like I said, you know, Zyla was only diagnosed about a year ago, so I'm still very like I still, not that I don't know how, I'm not 1000% like not familiar, but I don't know the correct terms to everything. So that's one of the reasons why I hold back. Another reason why I hold back is because I still get really emotional about it. But I decided to go ahead and do the video anyways. If you want to hear our autism story, then just keep on watching. Let's start at my pregnancy. My pregnancy was not a normal pregnancy. I had just had my son, and I had had my son via C-section. So I was breastfeeding, like completely breastfeeding my son. So I wasn't getting a period, so that was my form of birth control. I know it's really dumb, but hey. One day I was feeling really like weird, and I told my husband, and I told Fidel, and I was like, you know, I feel really weird. He's like, what do you feel? I'm like, I kind of feel like I'm pregnant. And he went out, he bought me a pregnancy test. He bought me the pack that comes with 2. I took both. They both came out negative, and I was like, well, maybe it's too early, you know. So then we waited 2 more weeks, then we took the pregnancy tests again. They were still negative. So I was like, that's really weird. So I was like, okay, you know, I'm not pregnant. Maybe it's just in my head. So that was that. And then about a week later, I felt movement in my stomach. So I was like, no, I'm pregnant. And I told him, and we went to the doctor. They did the pregnancy test through urine, and it came out negative. So I was like, no, is there any way you guys can do an ultrasound or blood, because I'm pregnant? And the doctor was like, well, it wasn't a doctor, it was one of the nurses, and she was like, you're not, it's showing it's negative. And I was like, I'm pregnant. And she kind of got an attitude with me, and she was like, she sent me home. I went to the car because Fidel was waiting in the car with my son, so he was waiting in the car with him. I got in the car. Fidel was like, so what happened? And I'm like, well, they said I'm not pregnant. So that was that. I got home, and I was like, you know what, like I'm pregnant. I am pregnant. So then I told my mom, and my mom talked to one of my aunts, and my aunt was like, oh, there's this doctor on Beverly in Montebello who has the ultrasound machine there, and that's how she'll test you like that. And I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go. So the next day I went. Actually, it was just me and my mom who went. And they did the ultrasound, and I was 12 weeks pregnant. When they did the ultrasound, there was a baby. It was a baby. It was formed like a baby, you know? So she was like, you're 12 weeks pregnant, and I can give you like an 80% chance that you're having a girl. And I was like, oh my God. I was scared, because after they had told me that I wasn't I mean, I had drank like 2 beers, not 2 beers, like 2 shots. So I was really scared, and I was really beating myself up for it. And I was like, fuck, like what the fuck did you do, Velika? Like, you know, even though now I know it wasn't my, like now I know, like why would you think that? You didn't know, you know? But you know, at that point I was like, what? Like, are you serious? Like, there's a baby in there. Like, it's, I'm guessing that since I saw her fully formed, I was like beating myself up more for it. And then like I wasn't on my prenatals. I was already 12 weeks pregnant. Like, I already knew I was practically having a girl. Like, I was just, it was really tough time for me. Scheduled me for another appointment, and that was that. I came home, I told Fidel I was pregnant. He was really scared. We had just had my son, so it was really unexpected. It wasn't something that we planned for, but it happened. A little down the road, I ended up having some issues with Fidel. We ended up leaving each other for like probably almost all of my pregnancy, but that's not this video. So let's not get sidetracked, guys. So yes, the week after that we went to go to a 4D ultrasound at 13 weeks, I believe I was. I'm not sure if I was 13 or 14 weeks, but it was one of those. And we got like the 99% that it was a girl. So I was really happy. I was happy, and then I was like scared. You guys, like, I am not kidding. The first thought that came into my head when they told me I was having a girl was like, I guess everything I had been through like as a teenager, because I was bullied a lot. Like, I was bullied since I was in elementary school. I was bullied. I remember being bullied since kindergarten up until I was done with school. So like, that's the first thing that came into my head. Like, I was happy because I already had a boy, and like, I wanted like my little mini me, you know. But then I was really scared because I was like, fuck, like, I don't want my daughter to go through anything that I have been through. Yeah, I was happy though. I was happy I was having a girl. I mean, what girl isn't happy that she's having a girl? So 2 weeks later, I went to the doctor again, and they told me that I had a complete placenta previa, and that I should not be lifting anything heavy. I shouldn't be doing any like crazy exercises. I shouldn't be walking too much. Basically, just take a chill pill, Velikan, like you have complete placenta previa. I spotted here and there, but other than that, I had like, I really didn't have any pain. None of that. But since my son was a big baby and I did have complete placenta previa, I did have scans every like month, I would say, to measure Zyla, so that they can see if there was any risks, because they didn't want to risk me going into labor alone, because I can potentially bleed out and die. So they didn't want me to go into labor on my own. So they would do these scans to see how much she weighed, see how big she was, and if she was getting too big. She was getting big enough to the point where she was gonna like go in labor, like I was gonna go into labor alone, they needed to take her out. So during one of those, they found that she had a very abnormal heartbeat. That's what they told me, that she had a very abnormal heartbeat. So then we were sent to NSTs, and I was doing NSTs. On top of that, I was doing the scans where they would measure. I was doing NSTs twice a week, and then that scan once a week. So it was really hectic. My whole pregnancy was so hectic, and it wasn't a normal pregnancy at all. I was super sick. I had nausea. I only gained like 15 pounds or less throughout my whole pregnancy, and I had Zyla at 32 weeks. So at 32 weeks, I was 30 weeks when they told me that they were going to be giving Zyla steroids because she needed to come already. I had my C-section scheduled at 32 weeks. I went in at 6 in the morning and Zyla was born at around 4 in the afternoon. She was born via C-section. I had to have a C-section because of my placenta previa, and she was premature. I wasn't going into labor alone. They took her out, you know. So they did a C-section. My C-section was so scary. I went in, and it was really long. I remember my son's was so fast, and everything was super fast paced, and there was so much noise in the room, and I was hearing everything that was going on. So I knew everything that was going on. Well, with Zyla, I wasn't hearing anything. It kind of, I remember the whole experience kind of just like blank. And I remember it taking so long. I'm so sorry, guys. It's just, yeah, I remember it taking super long. And at one point, like, I looked over at Fidel and I was like, why is this taking so long? Like, can you check and see what's going on? Like, I don't hear anything. And he was like, he was super scared. He was like super pale, white, like he was super scared. I looked over to the side and I see Zyla. And she was like so blue. And I think what makes it like the scariest is that I couldn't move. Like, I wanted to get up and to go see what the hell was going on, and I couldn't move. When they like pop open this bag that has this pump, and the pump is like green, and they put the pump into her and they start pumping her. A little less than a minute. About, I'm gonna say like 30 seconds after, she starts crying. I had to step away and like recollect myself, but then I was sent to recovery, and I was in recovery for about 3 hours because I was getting blood clots. So while I was in recovery, they had Zyla there with me. They had her in a little incubator for about 2 hours. After those 2 hours, they were able to hand her to me, and thank God she was breathing on her own after that, and it was just, after that it was practically smooth sailing. That was labor with Zyla. And then she was a really tough baby. I remember I was breastfeeding her, and I was strictly breastfeeding her. I would watch what I would eat because I wanted, you know, I didn't want her to get like any sort of like stomach problem. So I was taking care of myself, and Zyla was having like projectile like reflex, like she would throw up like crazy. And I went to the doctor, and they told me, they gave me like these little drops and to give her that before I started feeding her, and that didn't work. I went back, and Zyla was losing weight, so then they told me that I had to do formula. So I went into gentle ease formula, and she was still doing the same thing. It was still projectile vomiting, and since she wasn't eating well and she was, you know, having these issues, she was a really fussy baby. Eventually they told me to try AR formula. I tried AR formula and it worked. She was eating better, she started gaining weight, and it was good. Like, everything was good. When she was about 6 months old, I had a little Mamaroo swing, and I had it in my room. She had a crib, but she was mostly in the Mamaroo. I had the Mamaroo on, and I went to the kitchen to get her a bottle. And when I came back into the room and I looked at the Mamaroo, she was turning blue. And at that time Fidel was in the bathroom, and I like yelled out for Fidel, and Fidel came in and he saw, and he started freaking out, and we took her to the ER, and she basically had like, they told me it was a breath holding spell. That's what they told me, that it was a breath holding spell. And I had heard of breath holding spells because my little nephew used to have breath holding spells, but he was like 4 years old when he was having them, and Zyla was 6 months old. Like, when they explained that to me, I was like, how does that even make sense? How is my 6-month-old gonna be holding her breath for attention? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. But okay, I left it at that. After that, Zyla was really delayed. I was sent to a neurologist, but the neurologist basically would tell me like she's probably delayed because she was born premature. I would just go in visit after visit after visit, and I was also seeing a cardiologist because, as I mentioned to you guys, she did have an abnormal heartbeat that ended up being a heart murmur. So I was going to a neurologist and a cardiologist and then her pediatrician, and it was all back and forth stuff. 2 months after that, so she was about 8 months old, she wasn't really baby talking. She was making little noises, but she wasn't trying to say things. Like, it was just kind of like little squeaking things, like little squeaky noises she was making. It was nothing compared to, like, you know, what my son was trying to say things. My son was saying like ma by like 9 months, and my son was already crawling by 9 months, and Zyla wasn't even sitting up yet. Zyla was about 8 months old and she wasn't sitting up. She wasn't really baby talking. She wasn't crawling. So I kept seeing the neurologist up until, okay, so one day we were at home, and when my son had a ball, it was just those soft little balls, and it hit Zyla, and she started crying, but she didn't let out the initial cry. She started turning purple. The only difference at this time, when she started turning purple, she started jolting her arm, and that freaked me out, and she bit her tongue, and it was just really scary to watch. And we took her to the doctor. I told them what happened. They sent us to Children's Hospital so they can do an EEG. Everything came out good. Like, there was no signs of, you know, that seizure, because that's what they said it was. They said it was a seizure. There was no signs of the seizure causing any, you know, effects to her brain. So that was that. Shortly after that, she started having those a lot. Like, she was having those seizures a lot. She was having them at one point like 3 times a day. And let me tell you guys, it's a really tough thing to watch. I can tell you guys that I'm the only one who, when this happens, to this day, I can stay calm and collective and just like nurture her. Because if my mom is around when it happens, my mom freaks out and she starts crying and she starts shaking. The same thing with Fidel. Now, don't think I don't, like, don't get me wrong, like, it's not that I don't get scared. I get super scared. I mean, let me help paint a little picture so that you guys can, like, understand what happens. So, you know, let's say Zyla falls. Instead of Zyla crying, what she does is she starts, instead of letting out the initial cry, she holds it. And she starts turning really, really, really purple. And this whole time that she's turning purple, she's not letting out the initial cry, so she's not breathing. And if she's like standing up when it happens, she starts falling. So when this happens, I like grab her right away and I hold her super tight, because she starts arching her back. She starts arching her back, and then like her arm will kind of go back, and then she'll start like jolting it, and she does that for a few seconds, and then it just all stops. Like, it stops, and she like faints. And now, from being purple, she turns really, really, really pale. And at that point, I'm just talking to her like, Zyla, come back, Zyla. Zyla, it's okay, Mama. And I'm just like stroking her hair. And when she does come back to us, she just goes, she goes like that, and then she starts hysterically crying for like 10 seconds, and then she falls asleep. So it is the toughest thing as a mom to have to see so often, and to see my baby like not breathe. Because I knew, like, doing this video, like, I knew all the emotions were gonna come out, but because it's really tough for me to still talk about this stuff, because when I talk about it, I like relive it, and it's just, it's really hard. So since she started having these seizures, we were sent to the neurologist again, where we started seeing her a little more religiously. The test would come back that there was nothing, they didn't see anything going on in her brain. They couldn't give me medication because the neurologist that I see says that she doesn't like putting her kids into medication until the age of 3. So at that time, Zyla wasn't even 2 yet. So she just told me to, if it did get, you know, if it progressed, then I needed to go to the ER. We were just gonna monitor her and, you know, up until the age of 3. When her 2-year physical came, I took her to her pediatrician. Other than like the seizures, I didn't really see anything, you know, odd about Zyla. I mean, everything up until that point that, you know, her delays, like, I thought it was because she was premature. So I never really thought there was anything wrong with her. So when her 2-year physical came and I went to the doctor, to the pediatrician, he started talking to her and he asked me what, she doesn't say anything, and I was like, no, she doesn't. She's like, she doesn't say anything at all. I was like, no. He's like, does she say mom? I was like, no. He's like, does she say dad? I was like, no, she doesn't say anything. And he started writing stuff down, and then he started talking to her, and he's like, does she not look at you when you talk to her? And I was like, no, she doesn't. And he was like, okay. And at that point, Zala was already walking, and she was walking around the room, and he noticed that she was walking on her tippy toes, and he's like, does she normally do that? I was like, she doesn't walk on her tippy toes 24/7, but it is a habit. Like, I see it happening a lot. Like, she does it every day. And he's like, okay. And then he started showing her like little butterflies that were in the room, and she started flapping her hands, and he was like, does she do that often? I was like, she does it whenever she gets excited or whenever she gets scared. And he was like, okay. And he's like, that's when he asked me if I had her, if I knew what autism was. And I was like, yes, I've heard of it. And he was like, do you know what it is? And I was like, no. He said that she was showing a lot of characteristics of a child with autism, so that he wanted to send me to the regional center for her to get evaluated. He asked for my consent, and I said it was completely fine. So that was that. About a week later, I received my appointment in the mail. I went to the regional center, and they did the evaluation. And she looked at me. She told me, your daughter's on the spectrum. I love Zyla. Like, I love her, and I wouldn't change anything about her, but I get so emotional when I think about it, because I feel like at that point I felt like it was my fault. Like, at that time, when I heard that, when she told me that, I started just picking out everything that I can find to blame myself. I said it was my fault for getting pregnant so soon after I had my son. It was my fault, my body's fault, for not being able to carry her full term. It was just my fault. Everything was my fault. And I just couldn't get over it. Like, I couldn't get over the fact that I did this to my daughter, that her not having a normal childhood was my fault, because that's what I felt. I felt that Zyla was not going to have a normal childhood. I felt like she wasn't going to enjoy things the way other kids enjoy it, and it was really tough for me. Before I left, the child psychologist looked at me and told me, the same girl that you walked in with before I told you she had autism is the same girl you're walking out with. Nothing has changed. And I knew that, you know, like, I wouldn't change my daughter. It's just, I know how cruel people are, and that's what was hurting me. She was on the spectrum. She told me that she wanted to start her in early intervention and get her re-evaluated when it was halfway done, and get the therapist together to make sure there was no change, because since she was only 2 years old and diagnosed super early, the earliest that a child can be diagnosed with autism is at 2, but they're usually diagnosed at 3 and up, and Zyla was diagnosed at 2. So she wanted to get together with a therapist after she had been having the early intervention for half a year. Zyla was having OT once a week, early intervention twice a week, and speech once a week. So she was having 3 therapies. She was having 3 therapies in total. So therapists would come into my house and basically, you know, play with her, teach her things, and spend time with her. And within the 6 months, they went ahead and they did the second evaluation. Let me tell you guys, Zyla has grown so much. Within those 6 months, she grew so much. She wasn't saying one word when we started. within those 6 months, she was already saying her alphabet. She was, I think, early intervention so much. Like, I cannot, I can't even describe how thankful I am for all the therapies and everything that the regional center has done for us. At the 6 months, they redid it, the evaluation, and she was still on the spectrum, and that was that. And then after we're with the regional center, after that we go to the school district. So that's what we're doing right now. Right now we are transitioning from the regional center to the school district, and she's gonna be in a special needs class with other kids who are special needs. But as of right now, I don't want Zyla to be around other kids who might judge her or might laugh at her, because I don't want her self-confidence being destroyed or being put down at such a young age. Like, I don't want that to happen to her. So right now, that's what's gonna happen. She's gonna be in a special ed class. Well, she's gonna be in a class with other special needs students who are also on the spectrum or who do have other learning disabilities. This whole journey with Zyla has been really, really, really tough. Like, never in a million years when I put myself back into, like, you know, before I even had my son, did I think I was gonna be a mom so young. First of all. Second of all, like, I didn't think I was gonna have 2 kids at this age, and then let alone a daughter with special needs. Like, that wasn't in my plan. It's not in anybody's plan, obviously, but I feel like having a special needs daughter has given me such a big heart. I wouldn't be the person I am right now if I didn't have Zyla. Zyla having autism put me and Fidel back together. Like, me and Fidel we had already called it quits. We were already done with each other. Once, you know, Zyla, all these things started happening with Zyla, like, we both got such big hearts, and we see life different. Our family is above everything. We rather be with our family than with our friends. We rather, you know, take our kids out, and we rather, you know, we just see life differently. And I wouldn't change Zyla for the world. Like, I would never in a million years, if someone came to me and was like, you have one wish, what do you want? Like, I'll grant you one wish. I wouldn't wish Zyla's autism away. I would just wish that every person who came in contact with Zyla would accept her. I love Zyla and I love her personality, and her having autism makes, that's who she is. I love her so much, and I wouldn't change her. And the only thing that gets to me when I speak on Zyla having autism is the same thing that I thought, you know, of what I thought when they first told me that she had autism. Like, is she gonna have a normal childhood? Is she gonna be able to make friends? Is she gonna be able to go to school? Is she gonna be able to have a career? Is she gonna be able to get married, have kids? Like, is she gonna be able to do all of that? That's what I think of. That's like, that's my heartbreak in all this. Like, I want her to live the most normal life. Another thing that really, that I thought of when they told me that she was on the spectrum was that, like I mentioned to you guys, I was bullied so much. I was bullied since I was in kindergarten. And when they told me she had autism, and already knowing that, you know, Zyla doesn't like to be around people, that's the first thing that came to me. The first thing that came to my mind was that I don't want my daughter. I have fought so much for Zyla to be here. I have tried so hard to protect her, and I don't want her. I didn't want her. I didn't even want to think about her going through not even 10% of what I've been through in my life. Because it's tough. As a girl, you have so many emotions, and add bullying onto that, and it's just sometimes there was times I wanted to call it quits. Like I didn't want to be here anymore. And I don't want my daughter to ever feel what I felt. And when they told me she had autism, this whole journey has been super tough. Okay guys, so I'm so sorry if the video was all over the place. I had to step away a few times because it's a very emotional subject for me to speak on, because it's still very, very, very fresh to my heart. So thank you guys for watching. If you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe. Give the video a big thumbs up. It would mean a lot to me if you guys did that. But like I said, subscribe if you're not. Vlogging very often, and just so you can follow our journey. So thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.